Chapter 2 Annabeth. A sea of hastily assembled demigods parted for Annabeth as she walked through the forum. Some looked tense, some nervous. Some were bandaged from the recent battle with the giants, but no one was armed. No one attacked. Entire families had gathered to see the newcomers. Annabeth saw couples with babies, toddlers clinging to their parents' legs, even some elderly folks in a combination of Roman robes and modern clothes. Were all of them demigods? Annabeth suspected so, though she'd never seen a place like this. At Camp Half-Blood, most demigods were teens. If they survived long enough to graduate from high school, they either stayed on as counselors or left to start lives as best they could in the mortal world. Here it was an entire multi-generational community. At the far end of the crowd, Annabeth spotted Tyson, the Cyclops, and Percy's hellhound, Miss O'Leary, who had been the first scouting party from Camp Half-Blood to reach the Camp Jupiter. They looked to be in good spirits. Tyson waved and grinned. He was wearing a Pt4 banner like a giant bib. Some part of Annabeth's mind registered how beautiful the city was. The smell from the bakeries, the gurgling fountains, the flowers blooming in the gardens, and the architecture. Gods, the architecture! Gilded marble columns, dazzling mosaics, monumental arches, and terraced villas. In front of her, the demigods made way for a girl in full Roman armor and a purple cape. Dark hair tumbled across her shoulders. Her eyes were as black as obsidian. Reyna. Jason had described her well. Even without that, Annabeth would have singled her out as the leader. Medals decorated her armor. She carried herself with such confidence the other demigods backed away and averted their gaze. Annabeth recognized something else in her face, too. In the hard set of her mouth and the deliberate way she raised her chin like she was ready to accept any challenge. Reyna was forcing a look of courage, while holding back a mixture of hopefulness and worry and fear that she couldn't show in public. Annabeth knew that expression. She saw it every time she looked in a mirror. The two girls considered each other. Annabeth's friends fanned out on either side. The Romans murmured Jason's name, staring at him in awe. Then someone else appeared from the crowd, and Annabeth's vision tunneled. Percy smiled at her, that sarcastic troublemaker smile that had annoyed her for years, but eventually had become endearing. His sea-green eyes were as gorgeous as she remembered. His dark hair was swept to one side, like he'd just come from a walk on the beach. He even looked better than he had 6 months ago, tanner and taller, leaner and more muscular. Annabeth was too stunned to move. She felt that if she got any closer to him, all the molecules in her body might combust. She'd secretly had a crush on him since they were 12 years old. Last summer, she'd fallen for him hard. They'd been a happy couple for 4 months, and then he'd disappeared. During their separation, something had happened to Annabeth's feelings. They'd grown painfully intense, like she'd been forced to withdraw from a life-saving medication. Now she wasn't sure which was more excruciating, living with that horrible absence, or being with him again. The praetor Reyna straightened. With apparent reluctance, she turned towards Jason. "Jason Grace, my former colleague." She spoke the word colleague like it was a dangerous thing. "I welcome you home. And these your friends?" Annabeth didn't mean to, but she surged forward. Percy rushed towards her at the same time. The crowd tensed. Some reached for the swords that weren't there. Percy threw his arms around her. They kissed, and for a moment nothing else mattered. An asteroid could have hit the planet and wiped out all life, and Annabeth wouldn't have cared. Percy smelled of the ocean air. His lips were salty. "Seaweed brain," she thought giggedly. Percy pulled back and studied her face. "Gods, I never thought—" Annabeth wrapped his shirt in his fist and flipped him over her shoulder. He slammed down onto the stone pavement. Romans cried out. Some surged forward. But Reyna shouted, "Hold! Stand down!" Annabeth put her knee on Percy's chest. She pushed her forearm against his throat. She didn't care what the Romans thought. A white-hot lump of anger exploded in her chest, a tumor of worry and bitterness that she'd been carrying around since last autumn. "If you ever leave me again," she said, her eyes stinging, "I swear to all the gods." Percy had the nerve to laugh. Suddenly, the lump of heated emotions melted inside of Annabeth. "Consider me warned," Percy said. "I missed you too."